All right, so Daryl, do you see that? So we got recording in transcript.
Yes, John, I see it.
Okay, great. All right, so thanks for coming to this session. As I've kind of talked about, kind of going all the way back to last fall, the Air Force has been looking at moving into a hey, Daryl, do you see the people coming in? Can you check on, let them in as they show up? Do you see that?
Yep, I got it, John.
Okay, yeah, because you're logged in as CPM too, so that's great. Okay. So this is what we had been calling for the last year within the Air Force, the additional changes we need to win. So if you remember, Secretary Kendall had the previous Secretary of the Air Force had a series of things that were going on to change the process, which is, I'll just say in general, his whole operational imperative effort was to have a more focus on capabilities that are tied to missions. And then there was a whole discussion about moving to a portfolio management approach. There was actually an Air Force proposal for the 26 NDIA to talk about portfolio management, and the Air Force going down a pilot down that side. That kind of faded away when Secretary Kendall, when we got the new administration, but it turns out that both the House and the Senate have adopted those philosophies, and they are in the NDIA drafts that we have going on. And so you can see that coming. And then we also see that in the executive order. So this is a little group that I've told my Air Force clients within SAF AQX that we need to get ready for this to be coming. And there's a lot of modeling that's going on, and there's more and more desire to understand where particular capabilities are within their schedule. And notice I'm saying capabilities, not necessarily contracts, because as you all know, some contracts, especially like mod contracts, can have multiple capabilities in them. And those capabilities can be for different mission needs, right? So there is some new mission need modeling that's going on within the Air Force that unfortunately I can't talk about the great detail, but I'll have a little bit of an unclass example for you about that as we go through. We did run a pilot program last fall in through March to build a little bit of an unclass example. And then the executive orders all came out, and it kind of like slowed things like, where is this all going to go? But now we're kind of back into the rush again, I would say, as the executive orders are clearly coming down the line of picking up the concept of portfolio management and picking up the emphasis on missions. So had a little slowdown, but now we're back. We're at effort. So I call this a notional Air Force portfolio data structure because we don't have the direction yet of exactly how the portfolio effort is going to be laid out by the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy SecDef, but those memos are floating around and are going to be coming out, very similar to what came out on the 20th of August for the requirement side of the business. So you'll be seeing sometime in the future a full implementation of the what we call Part 3, 4, and 5 of the executive order, where the requirements business was kind of Part 7 of the executive order that President Trump signed in April. So I'll talk about that, the who, what, when, where, why, what we're doing, this NDIA approach, trying to get industry input into this. Because we want to use the industry schedules. That's my perception of how that's going to work. I'll talk a little bit about why we're walking down that path, this multi-dimensional portfolio kind of concept, walking in there, which is part of a research project that I did for Dave Cadman back in 22 and 23, also kind of in prep for where this is going. And just to let everybody know, I did have an hour-long conversation with Mr. Cadman a week before, so like 2 weeks ago, and he's supportive of this effort, interested to see what's going to come out of it. So we've got general good support going on. And the bottom line is we need to kind of build some ontologies, data structures over top of the traditional WBS structure so we can integrate across programs, across systems, because multiple systems go into mission needs. Kind of things are getting much more integrated than they were in the past. I added this chart in if you're interested, saying like, Driessnack, all these crazy ideas that are never going to come true. Well, what you need to do, there's a good article out, recent article about the 26 NDIA. In there, it will talk about this thing called the SPEED Act on the House side and the Forged Act on the Senate side. So you can look at those. Congress is going to go into conference here in October, maybe if we once we get through the continuing resolution kind of stuff, and an NDIA will come out, and there are going to be changes going on. I will just say sometimes we have stuff on the Senate side and not on the House side. Sometimes it's on the House side, not on the Senate side. And you don't know whether it's going to come out in reconciliation when the final National Defense Authorization comes out. I will tell you that there are common things across both the Senate side and the House side, and moving to a portfolio management approach is one of them. All right, so you can look at that. You ought to look at the SecDef's memo and the Deputy SecDef's memo that came out on the 20th of August on the requirements process. So that is part of the overall executive order. That's section 7 of the executive order, talking about that. What we're really talking about is eventually there's going to be a Deputy SecDef memo that's going to come out that's going to talk about sections 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and 3 is really the one where, I think it's going to be very similar to what's in the NDAAs, right, kind of thing. So drafts are floating around, not public yet, but those things are going to come out, I'm told, sometime in October. So we'll see. Maybe the CRA and the shenanigans going on now will delay that a little bit, but maybe not. If you want to get a good idea about that, on the Forged Act side, there's this discussion about portfolio acquisition executives. You can read about that in the Section 809 panel, Volume 3, Section 2. So there's a link, the DTIC link to that. If you go to Volume 3, Section 2, it will talk about several recommendations. One of them is empowering the PEO to have more authority in to manage the portfolios. And it mentions the ANSI standard for portfolio management, which is published by PMI. So that gives you a little bit of background. There's also the PBBE commission that came through, so you can look at that. Look at recommendations number 4 and number 10. And those are related to reorganizing the way the budget process is done through capabilities. So if anybody knows, like if you're on the F-16 program office, things are pretty much consolidated into one budget line for all the mods for F-16, but all the different items that come into that are all over the place. And so you have PEOs that now have dozens of line items, budget line items, for basically they need to integrate all together. So there is a push on the authorization side, not necessarily on the appropriation side, but on the authorization side to do some consolidation and aligning of those things. So that's kind of one of the things that is going on, is aligning the requirements process, the acquisition process, in the resource process, the planning and programming and budgeting process. So that's very interesting, and see whether that is actually going to go about. In general, the Air Force, I think, is in front on this whole digital transformation and going to digital twins and all that other stuff. You can read more about that in the Digital Transformation Office. You can read more about mission engineering in mission engineering threads and those kind of things in the Mission Capabilities Office. You've seen some wording, coming out talking about mission engineering and integration, MEAI. So you can read more about that at that cto.mil site. And then unselfish plug here, my own research down this line is at my research page at the University of Maryland. It talks about multidimensional portfolio management. And if you want to read behind some of the charts I'm going to show, you can see that in those research papers, that was a UARC funded from the Acquisition Innovative Research Center, the AIRC. So if you go to the Stevens Institute website and look up the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, there is other research also going on about how to walk down a portfolio path and everything else that's been going on for the last 3 or 4 years. So a lot in there that is all going to come together. And as you've heard from the Secretary of War, as I guess I shouldn't say SecDef anymore, but Secretary of War, is the emphasis is getting pulled off of cost and being put on speed. And when you put that on speed, that means we need to understand schedules. And so just that at a macro level kind of gives you an idea that schedules are going to become much more important. Not necessarily earn value. We're not earn value on everything, but the schedules, having good schedules so we know when all the parts are coming together. All right, so another kind of summary chart. So there's the executive order, the Fords and the Speeds Act. It's going to affect the PEOs and how they work within the decision support system, the requirements process, acquisition process, resource process. That's going to have some change. I can't predict exactly where that's going to go, but speed is going to be a key part of it. And the scheduling is going to be a key part of it, right? OSD, the PEOs and the programs are going to be put into some kind of portfolio structure. That is not, it's going to be a capability portfolio structure is what I would predict. If you want to look, there is a DoD directive on capability portfolio management, 7045.20. That has been recently updated. I assume that it will be updated again when all this stuff comes out and we're walking down this path. It's the need for speed, as Tom Cruise would say. And so it looks like we're going to go down this delegation to the PAE. So you get faster by not having people to come up to the most senior level and push things down to the lower level. You'll see that most aggressively in the Senate side. The Forged Act aggressively pushes authority down to a portfolio acquisition executive. The House side less so, so we'll have to see. And then there's the executive order. So how that's all going to pan out, I can't tell you, but something's going to go down that line kind of thing. There's a lot of industry and academic papers that are out there pushing down that line. I will tell you, one of the biggest ones out here is from the Hudson Institute. Okay, you can see I've scribbled all over it. It's called the Required to Fail, and that I'm told by people is being influential in the Defense Department. Very interesting write-ups and everything else. So it's something that is another reference you might want to look at, right? When you think about portfolios, there are system, there's program portfolios that roll into systems. There are capability portfolios. So I can have a system portfolio on F-16s, F-15s, F-22s, F-35s. Then I can have a capability of the fighter platform. And then that's a capability portfolio. And then those capabilities that get put onto missions. And so that's the scenario that we're looking at, is really a three kind of tier. You can look at technology portfolios, other kind of ways of looking at it. But to me, the principal flow here is programs go into systems, we upgrade systems, that gives us new capabilities, which then get applied to missions. And so it's that kind of ontology that's kind of being talked about and worked on in there. All right. So this is just a reminder of the ANSI standard from PMI. The latest version is 2017. And so right on the top of that, it talks about you need to build a strategic management plan, a strategy of how you're going to improve and get value out of. And that's what I see where today a program executive officer has no documentation required of them, But a lot of PEOs do write strategic documents and saying where their PEO and the collection of their programs are going, where they're taking them over time. That's probably going to become more of a requirement. And then the fourth one down is really important one there is then the value management. How are we going to measure value at the portfolio level? And if the predominant thing is speed, then you're going to be looking at, my prediction, roadmaps is what the PMI would call it. But as we know them as schedules, how are we going to measure schedules that people really are accelerating the process to get capabilities delivered to the field, in there. And so, risk is going to come along. We need to be risk informed. That's getting more and more prominent in there. Thus the discussion about adding risk data into this game, not necessarily to be checking your schedule risk analysis on the contractor side, but that data is flowing up and we can have some standardization there also within the government about how we track risk data. And that can go into the optimization models. So that's why risk is kind of being added into that game. All right, so here's the top level schema. On the far left side, you have a combatant. In that little purple box there is all the doctrinal documents of all the different kind of missions that you can have going on. You can go, it's called the hierarchy, the joint staff hierarchical structure. You can download that off a public website. The boxes that are all in red, those documents all classified. The boxes that aren't in red, you can download those documents and read them, kind of thing. So that's where mission threads are driven out of. If I want to do a particular like close air support, then I need a mission to do that close air support. Okay. To do that mission, I need various units of action. So what's the force structure? Where are the fighters, the bombers, the tankers, the weapons, and those kind of things, right? Those units have particular capabilities. In this example, we're looking at aerial refueling, that's in red. The aerial refueling capability, let's say it's a KC-135, is being managed by a system manager at a right pad. And then they have a mod program that's going on under PEOA or whichever, it actually would be PEO mobility in the Air Force. And then they're incorporating some technology that maybe AFRL has incorporated, right? So there's the flow. And what we don't have a really good understanding of is a connection of all that. I'm going to use an example later on with radar warning receivers on the F-16, the ALR-69A. It's been around for a while. It's getting upgraded. It's going into F-16, C-130s, KC-46s, maybe some other aircraft. And we really don't have a good way to track where all that subsystem is going and why, what mission do we need that new digital radar warning receiver in the F-16, like into a Block 50, in what kind of mission, in what combatant commander's area, kind of thing. And so that's that setup. So what you end up with is people are trying to do analysis across this, and they're doing it really in 4 parts. So if I start in the bottom left-hand corner, you're looking at intel changes, what the mission is being done and which unit's doing it in near term and saying, hey, can I get those missions done successfully? And if I can't, then I say, well, that unit of action that has that F-16, I got to go and I got to build a new capability on some part of that mission thread. And let's say it's the F-16. So that gets me to, I want to upgrade the F-16 and maybe upgrade the radar warning receiver. And then the third block is, okay, I got that F-16, I'm upgrading the radar warning receiver. So now I'm going to incorporate some new technology and I'm going to put that into a program, a contract. It may stand alone by itself, or it may be a mod contract that's has 3 or 4 or 5 other things that are going on that may or may not be involved in the key mission that really started this whole process, right? And then we have the cost and schedule performance for managing the particular contract. What we do today is we spend a lot of time collecting data on that cost schedule performance on the particular contract, the box in the upper right-hand corner, right? And we can do a lot of good analysis on that. and everything else with earned value or schedule risk and whatever. We do cost estimates and all this other good stuff. Tying that data back down to the mission and saying, I've got a mission that has 20 things going on, and the intel tells me I need to upgrade 3 or 4 of them. And those 3 or 4 upgrades are being done across various different PEOs and various different programs of various different contracts. Who's the last one coming to the game to fix the mission thread? What the Air Force would call closing the gap on the mission thread. So if I got 20 things going on, where am I in that? And that is a very manual effort at this point in what's being done. So the thought process here is to take that into builds, is to use schedules to help do some of this. So this is a chart I've had around at a very macro level. Primes and subs are at the bottom. They're providing schedules up to program offices who are integrating those things together because, like a good example, the ALR 698 and the F-16, you know, the depot may be integrating that in, but the actual device, the ALR 698 is coming from somebody else on a different contract. The F-16 has the money to install it, but they don't have the money to buy it. Somebody else is buying it. It's being done with other mods that are happening at the depot. And so when is all the ALR 698s going to be in, and when are they going to be available for when they need to be available? So that, what I'll call that vertical stack, we actually do not a bad job on, right? We can stack that up, and we have systems like the Program Management Reporting Tool, PMRT, that gives us a lot of data on the individual contracts, individual programs. We have ConWrite, all our contracts are electronic. We can roll all those up, and we can get an idea at the service acquisitions executive level or Air Force Material Command level about how the programs are going and everything else. But the horizontal stack, going across over where I've got a mission engineering thread that's telling me this particular mission needs these particular capabilities to be upgraded on a particular vignette of that scenario, like in Indo-PACOM or in Homeland Defense, to priority mission areas, we're not as good about that. We do not have a good idea about how to do that and how to pull that data. And the way schedules come in, it would be, in my opinion, very hard to pull that data out, right? And vendors are turning in a schedule every month or every 3 months, whenever it's required, you know, and those kind of things. A lot of it, only people that are doing earned value in general are doing it to the IPMDAR and standard data sets. Everybody else is doing it probably in their native language. So of the tool. So very hard to integrate that at an Air Force level and then know what to pull out of that to get us across to the vignette. Because when you go look at the mission engineering side, where we on the programmatic side, we've got a standard WBS and we have a standard WBS with the system engineering people. But when we go to mission engineering and look at a mission thread, and the common breakout of mission thread is called F2T2EA. Find, fix, track, target, engage, and then assess. General breakout of a mission thread. But getting below that and getting a common nomenclature, a common WBS of the mission and what systems are underneath that, those do not exist today. People are making them, but they're making them in various different ways. So one of the challenges behind the scenes happening in the Pentagon is to try to make that more standard, right? So you'll see guides that are out there. I gave you some references in the beginning about some guides down that line. We have not moved to standards yet where everybody agrees this is how we do it. You don't even have like F2T2EA being used as a structure being used across all mission threads. So it varies. So let me just pause there for a second before I go to the next level of detail. Any questions at this point? I don't think I have any comments. Daryl, do I have any comments?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So let me keep plugging along here. So here's a notional kind of the way this would, as I perceive it, potentially it's going to work. And I'm interested in feedback over the next, 2 months into early December about what would be feasible, right? So we have the IPMDAR and we have an IMS DiD that's being worked. So the thought process here, I got sub schedules, vendor schedules that are either going into the prime schedule and going into the central repository, or in some cases they're skipping, the vendor, or parts of them are going directly to the central repository. In talking with Mr. Cadman and John McGann, Mr. Cadman wants, when the IMS DiD comes out, everybody who's using the IMS DiD with the IPMDAR, the scheduling data in it, those are all going to go to the central repository, right? So, hey, that's a great source of where we can go. So we can get that. Now, classified programs are not going in there, right? So that's one of the challenges we're going to have to work with, because we need to be, as they say in the Pentagon, SAP, Special Access Program. We need to be SAP informed. So what would we propose happen? What would happen is the Air Force would have a database at both NIPR, SIPR, and JWIX Plus going up to SAP. It would pull data out of the central repository and then also grab data from the classified programs at the appropriate level. And then what we're going to add to that data is data out of PMRT, which is currently now unclassified, but it is also being pushed up to the SIPR level. So it can pick up most of the classified programs. So PMRT is the program management resource tool. It holds all the baselines, all the budgets, everything else for each of the individual programs. You have a thing called CCARs. Look at that as like the QuickBooks of a program office. It has all the, what money's going out for what CLIN and stuff like that. That's all automated. That's all in databases. PBAS is the budget palming and budget system that's at SIPR, and it tells you everything going on into the future. And that's where, most importantly, PBAS is where the initiatives and disconnects get put into to change the budget. Whether you need more money or you have money taken away from you, that is at the SIPR level, the secret level, and that's going into PBAS. So what we need to add to this mix is what's in the green box, and I don't put it in a database because there isn't a database yet. A lot of the mission threads are being done like in Cameo, but they're not being done in a standard way where Cameo data is being put into a database somewhere. There's no IPMDAR for mission engineering that's standardizing the data. It can be done in Cameo, in Doors, other tools. It's not standardized. So that is another challenge I'm working in other areas. So you can see the words there. The idea is that we pull this data together and then we can do the analytics that we need to do. And so the analytics, what we need to do is we're going to actually go pull that data and pull the horizontal schedule out. This is why the schedule needs to be coded a little bit differently. So I'm open to suggestions. Matt Pistic's going to talk about some ideas about what they did with NASA Robert Trumper's on here from Risky Project. Those are the tools that we've been using, Proteus and Risky Project right now, to kind of play through all of this. So, what we can do to pull horizontally across and actually build mission critical paths with risk analysis. So I know on a mission, if I have 20 different things that are in there, 10 of them maybe have nothing going on with them. They are systems that are just currently in sustainment. And then I have 10 of them that have various different mod programs going on and changes. So what changes do I need on this key mission? And who's the last one coming to the game to fix the mission thread? So we are now green on that mission thread or blue on that mission thread instead of being yellow or red on that mission thread. Yellow and red meaning questionable about whether we would win, and red being like, oh, we think we would lose, right? So where is that? That then drives funding alternatives, okay, which then drives the POM and the budget priorities. And then that gets put back in the PBAS, and that's what causes the budget to change. So this is really an exercise to better inform and do the optimization to better inform where the money's going. So as the big beautiful bill has given us a huge chunk of more money. There's an emphasis that money is not going to be the problem. Time's going to be the problem. Speed is the problem. So now you get the emphasis on you. We're not trying to be as efficient as possible. We're trying to be as effective, especially in terms of time. And so that's the whole picture, right? At a notionally top level kind of setup. So if you go through this and say like, well, how would this actually work? So there's a generic term being used within the Air Force called the bird of prey. That is a generic modeling name of a variety of different efforts that are going on. Most of them at a fairly high classification level. But there's a general drift kind of in this bird of prey thing of how do we improve how things are done. So here's a notional example, you kind of digest. So there are 18 different combatants, regional commanders, functional commanders, and combat support units. They all have missions. So just right there, they may be the same mission, but they're in different places. So there's complexity here where an F-16 Block 40 may do great in AFRICOM, but it is not going to do great in Indo-PACOM, right? So it kind of matters on what vignette scenario you're talking about and what combatant commander area. So if we start with Indo-PACOM, then we come over and we have an operation we call the Joint Offensive Air Operation, and that gets broken down into 3 mission categories: maritime strike, offensive counter-air sweep, and then offensive counter-air strike. And then you can see the platforms, an F-16 CJ or an F-16 CM, which is a Block 40 or a Block 50, an F-22 supported by an E-3 or an F-22 supported by an E-7. Makes a difference because they have different capabilities, right? So then the missions get coded red, yellow, green differently, right? And then you have F-35As from the Air Force and F-35Cs coming off the carrier. The difference there is the F-35C can get tanked by like an MQ-25 off the carrier, where the F-35A's got to be tanked, you know, by a KC-135 or a KC-46. So this is the kind of the structure that starts getting broken down. And then you take those missions. If you just take one of them, then the task to activity breakout of that CD mission gets broken out. And you can see the tankers are in there, different parts of the aircraft upgrades are in there, the digital radar warning receiver, new comm units, you know, and those kind of things are going on. And then that gets broken down further, each one of those about what's the particular capability you need to do. So we don't need to go to that level on the scheduling kind of part, right? But it is important. This is kind of a table of all the different kind of programs going on in that one mission under the F-16 CJ, the Block 50. And I've just highlighted the comm suite and the digital radar warning receiver, right? And so what people are looking for, if you look at this thing, it's like, when's the online date and when's the sunset date? In other words, when does this new capability come online and how long is it going to last for? You know, kind of thing. And that lasting can be because of, you know, it degrades, or it can be because we predict that the red team's going to now, you know, outdo it, you know, in that sense. So this is where the scheduling part comes into it, right? And when you look at the F-16 today, not counting FMS and everything else, there's like almost 20 programs. I won't say exactly how many, but there are, you know, dozen plus programs going on in the F-16 alone. Which one of those programs matches up to what mission thread? I can't tell you right off the bat. And we don't have a standard ontology to kind of describe that, but each one of those things is potentially an important part of a particular mission set. So the ideal is all the schedules on all those programs, and a lot of them are little ACAT2, ACAT3 programs, which we don't necessarily have good scheduling data on. So this is the whole thing. We get the IMS DiD, but we want those schedules, which could be very basic schedules. They don't have to be complex, you know, down to the 7th control account level, you know, 7th level of the WBS down to individual control accounts. but they need to be detailed enough that it will give me an idea with risk data to give me an idea about when is that going to get delivered. And this is where what I perceive is there's going to be a discussion between the government and that vendor and or the prime who's delivering those subsystems that are going into something else about what we need to code, which pieces of data we need to pull out so we can see the bigger picture. And that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But that's kind of the thing we've thought about is some kind of coding that says, oh, when you submit your IMS, it's part of it's for contract management. But the other thing is I'm interested in particular things in that schedule that now I'm going to pull out for that horizontal part and match it up with all the other horizontal parts for all the other systems in there. And so just to give you an idea of the kind of questions that get asked, I've made this a little generic, but what's in the brownish kind of color is the things we need to solve. Can we patrol program health across the mission threats? Really, the answer to that is no, but we could. It should be yes, because we can pull data from PMRT, but we need an ontology to be able to do that and tie it to the mission threat. So that's something that's being worked. Can we demonstrate, the need for that component and then to operate at scale, where we're going to have multiple versions of not just initial IOC, but at scale enough? Again, that's building a roadmap to say, like in installs of, how many we're going to have, when are we going to have them, what part of the world we're going to have them in, that kind of thing. And you can read through the other stuff. So these are the kind of questions that are having to be asked. The stuff in the dark color, I will tell you, is questions that were asked in a memo to me and other people at a very senior level. Can we do this? So you can see that. Can we identify the technical risk, at the enterprise level? Well, we don't have standardized risk data. So no, that's very hard to do across these mission threads. So thus the reason to go kind of standardize the kind of data that we're going to get in there. So this is a quick effort. So this is my second to last slide. This is a quick effort. The next 3 months, it's a proof of concept on how we could do this to convince senior leaders that this is a path we can go down, right? There's a good amount of frustration of the lack of data to be able to tell things. And so I think there's an emphasis, I'm not guaranteeing it, but there's a good chance that if we come up with a good schema, we can sell it, it'll get funded, we can build the systems inside the government, and then we can, do contract mods or whatever needs to be done to add the data to get from particular people. I see it as a slow rollout. Key missions being done, or where there's a decision point, things are going to be done. It's not just an Air Force thing. I've talked to Mr. Cadman about it. He understands it. I've got, John McGann's on the phone or on the call. We've had a lot of discussions about this, about where this might go. Talked to John McGregor about the IMS DiD and where is that going. I think initially I could see this as being kind of an add-on to the Block 16 of the SEAD Rule 1423 to start the process. And then if it all goes well, it may eventually then get incorporated into the IPMDAR, the IMS DiD, or kind of officially. But, in the beginning, it's probably going to be some pilot things that will come out. So we're looking for industry input, what's viable, what could be done kind of down this line. We're going to be talking to some of the PEOs and stuff like that about what we're trying to do. Some may be interested in jumping in front of us on this, which is fine. I'm trying to stop it from being each PEO doing their own thing and their own approach. I can't tell you, but I can tell you there are PEOs that have vendors that are looking at doing some of this stuff, and they're already trying to do it, and they're struggling doing it. And even if one of them solves the problem, that's not necessarily the standard solution we want to have across everybody. So that's why I'm kind of coming out to the industry. This is the 3rd of October meeting, 24th, the 7th, the 21st, and the 12th. Every 3 weeks. I'm interested in your input. You can send me an email anytime. I'd be glad to spend time talking with you on other phone calls or whatever else about what your thought processes are on this line. This is not an exercise on selling the government the system, right? I'm not in that business. I'm not going to decide how the system's going to be set up and everything else. That's going to be the business system guys and everything else. I am working on the standardization of the data so the schema can work. How the government actually puts that in what database and everything else, that's going to be up to them. We did pilot the start of the pilot of this concept, and that was, I'll be frank, done with Proteus and Risky Project. The reason that was done is because Proteus and Risky Project is already in the government, it's already in the Air Force, and it's also already at the SAP level within other organizations in the Department of Defense. So it's already kind of cleared at the top level. So, but again, it's an open environment. It's because the idea is you're going to have everybody who's building schedules are going to have to comply. So it can't be tied to a particular vendor, right? It has to be an open data system, kind of going down that line. Okay, so first we're going to kind of talk about the data file, the Excel file. We sent that out. Matt Pistic put that together for me. And that's kind of based on what Risky Project does. So we can have a discussion about that for maybe 15 minutes or so. If people have discussions or I'm interested in inputs back. And then I'm going to ask Matt to talk about the second topic, which is how do we think about the coding to build kind of, I look at it generically as kind of building in ghost tasks that then can come up and be part of the mission thing, not vertical, but horizontal. And so how would we code that in that process? And we can talk about that a little bit. And then the third part of the Flex files, since we're in the shutdown and everything else, and Sarah Green is a civilian, she's not available. So hopefully we can come back and pick up that topic later on. Don't really have the right person in the room to talk about that topic to say, so I'm going to table that topic at this point. So I'm gonna actually stop the recording at this point. And also, does somebody have a general question before I stop the recording? All right, not. I'm gonna stop the recording.